Yes.
30-second warning. Okay, it's 4:30. I'm calling the meeting to order and acknowledge that the District of Tofino operates within the territories of Tla-o-qui-aht First Nation, Tla-o-qui-aht. Notice to attendees that the meeting is being recorded and published on the District channel. Notice to virtual attendees to sign up for public comment and question period using the Q&A function in Zoom. Registered participants are required to enter their full name, residential address, the agenda item they wish to speak to. Through unanimous consent, if there are no objections, I move that pursuant to section 15 of the District of Tofino meeting procedure bylaw number 129/2016 is amended. April 28, 2026 regular meeting be held electronically on Zoom and live broadcasted on the District of Tofino's YouTube channel. At the facility provided for the public to watch and hear the meeting be located at Tla-o-qui-aht Sound Theatre, 380 Campbell Street, in Tofino, BC. Seeing no objections, motion is carried. You have a couple amendments for the agenda. So I will look to council and move from the chair that the April 28, 2026 regular council agenda be amended to add sections 91G and 92B community charter to the recommendation at item 15.1 closed session. Seconder for that, that's Steer. All in favor? Unopposed, motion's carried. And I'll move to actually move from the chair that the April 28, 2026 regular council agenda as amended be adopted. Can I get a seconder for that? Thomas, all in favor? Unopposed, motion's carried. Okay, consent agenda. If council is amenable, I'll move to unanimous consent if there are no objections that items 4.1 to 4.3 of the consent agenda on the regular council meeting held on April 28, 2026 be approved. No objection to that motion is carried. Mayor's report. It was lovely to attend the Tourism Tofino District of Tofino meeting in the Tourism office. Packet. Members of the board to go over all the wonderful things Tourism Tofino is doing in our community. Also, pleasure with Councillor Sawyer and Councillor Thomas to attend a meeting with the Minister of Infrastructure and Minister of Health, Hospital, project, and then Councillor here. I'll look forward to that end. It's also a pleasure to attend AVICC, the Association of Vancouver Island Coastal Communities. Victoria, it's great to see so many elected officials, staff members, ministry staff, and all the other partners and collaborators that make the province work, especially Vancouver Island. Good time. On to public comment on agenda item. There we have Scepter.
Thank you, Mayor Law. I will now make an open call for comments. For those in the gallery who wish to speak, please raise your hand. It is the online via Zoom that would like to comment. You can do so now using the Q&A function. Before making a comment, you will need to state your name, your address, and the agenda item you are speaking to. I will now do a call. Calling once, calling twice, calling 3 times.
Great. Well, I do have, sorry, say that again.
So, Mayor Law, there is one.
On, oh, there was one, oh, hand up there. Okay. And unmute Zoom there, and whoever it is up there, I can't read who's up there, but please say your name, the address, and the agenda item you wish to speak to, and you have 2 minutes.
Hello.
Hi, I'm Ms. Ho. Please go ahead. You have 2 minutes. So you could just say your name and the address, your residential address and the item that you'd like to speak to.
Sure. My name is Carrie Ho. I'm a volunteer board member for West Coast Multiplex Society. I am a Yukon resident. I live on the traditional territory of Yukon people. And I wanted to make a comment about the Tofino Parks and Rec Master Plan.
Oh, go ahead. You've got 2 minutes.
Great. I just want to quickly comment that I was very excited to see that the multiplex is listed in the Parks and Recs Master Plan, and that regional collaboration is identified as one of the priorities. We actually just put in an expression of interest to CBT to host a vital conversation on recreation for the region. With Tofino finalizing the Parks and Recs Master Plan and Ucluelet doing the same thing not far behind, we feel like this is a good time to get everyone on the same table to discuss a regional approach to recreation. So it was very exciting to see that Tofino feels the same way. And yeah, I'm looking forward to hearing the discussion today and see how Tofino wants to support not just the multiplex, but regional recreational priorities for all the community members. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. We do have one member of the public signed up for comment. Mr. Vishraper. So again, just you gotta say your name, the address, and the idea. You have 2 minutes.
Hello, everyone. Nick Fishrapper with Tla-o-qui-aht Development Corporation. I reside at 6 Howard Tom Road, IR 11, Tinwis. Mayor and Council, today, later this meeting, you will be asked to consider a temporary use permit application on behalf of Tla-o-qui-aht Development Corporation for 150 Grace Road to offer cultural experiences and tourist accommodation. The plan is to operate a business as a satellite extension of Sawak RV Resort, integrating cultural experiences with the existing geodesic domes. Operating as a satellite of Sawak, we will offer an immersive experience that shares the living history of the land through programming centered on the channel's stewardship, traditional knowledge, and art. We foster deep respect for our ancestral connection to the territory. Economically, this venture strengthens the broader Tofino tourism ecosystem through proven management models and collaborative community partnerships. We aim to bolster the economy by ensuring the revenues stay within the region to support community health, infrastructure, and the shared prosperity of both Tla-o-qui-aht and the District of Tofino. TDC manages the economic development interests of Tla-o-qui-aht First Nation. Tla-o-qui-aht has long desired a presence within the Tofino core, particularly a business presence. So this prominent, well-established venue is an excellent opportunity. Grace Point is also an area of significance for Tla-o-qui-aht. So the opportunity to acquire this particular area is of added value. In fact, Grace Point is known as Natchix in the Nch'anolf language, which of course we know as the name for Tofino. Tla-o-qui-aht, by way of the temporary use operations, will seek to generate revenues to support future economic opportunities for the nation, including exploring the proposed development within the comprehensive development zoning to support regional tourism and housing and TFN economic prosperity. Tla-o-qui-aht looks forward to this opportunity to operate a business venture within the District of Tofino downtown core, showcasing both Tofino and Tla-o-qui-aht.
Thank you. All right, moving on to presentations reports. We have an invited presentation from Sackett, Executive Director of Tourism Tofino.
Slides.
Thanks so much for having me. I'm grateful to be joining you all within the Hope Weekly of our Tla-o-qui-aht Tutway and be going through this as Samantha Hackett, the Executive Director of Tourism Tofino. Excited to be presenting to you all in my new role. It's been almost 5 months now. Previously, if you didn't all know, I was on the board of directors for 10 years of Tourism Tofino. So really excited to be still part of the organization. And I'll be sharing highlights from 2025, which is really the great work of all of these people, minus myself and Emily, who are the two new staff people on the team, but the rest of them have executed all of this amazing work. So the full package of audited financials, they were included in the agenda package. Hopefully you've gone through them with a fine-tooth comb. If you have any questions throughout my presentation, please feel free, or you can wait till the end. The 2025 annual report was also included. We'll go over that, the visitation indications, the operational highlights, and the documents that were included in the package are also included on our industry section of our website. If anyone wants to reference them going forward, we keep all of those documents from previous years as well on the industry site. If you go right to the very footer of our public website, it's industry to find them all. The audited financial report covers the fiscal period ending December 31st, 2025, and was completed by Grant Thornton LLP. We're happy to report that we had another clean audit in 2025. And so I'll give you a few highlights, 3 slides from the financials, starting with the statement of operations. That was on page 3 of the financials. The first thing you'll notice is that we had an operating deficit in 2025. And in Tourism Tofino, the board of directors very specifically worked thoughtfully in 2025 to allocate spending from unexpected MRDT surplus, which was accumulated back in 2022. There was a spike in visitation post-COVID. And so while the organization made an operating loss in 2025, this was intentional, and the organization has been responsibly spending that money and reinvesting the surplus cash on hand as we move forward. The reported MRDT revenue does not include the $400,000 that was retained by the District of Tofino for the 2025 contributions to the Tofino's wastewater treatment plant. So after the $400,000 in 2026, there will have been a total of $1.6 million in MRDT that has gone to the much needed infrastructure project, which is very exciting. On the expenditure side, Tourism Tofino invested more in advertising in 2025, in promotion and in programs. You'll see a decrease for research and product development, which in 2024 was spent on the economic impact of tourism study. That was mostly completed in 2024, so it was spent in 2024, but the report didn't release until early 2025. Moving to page 5 of our financial report, there's the statement of financial position. This shows where the organization ended the year with assets and liabilities. You'll see we're down overall on the asset side. That was due to the decisions of the board made around allocating the previous surplus to operating projects, as I previously mentioned with the last slide. And then the last page that I'll show you is page 6 of the statement of financial position. That's similar to the last slide, but this time it's the liabilities. No significant changes or lines to note, but just wanted to make sure that we had a look at both sides, the assets and the liabilities. So overall for Tourism Tofino, we continue to be in a very healthy financial position moving forward. And I did want to take a moment, as I mentioned, with the wastewater treatment plant, but just overall to thank the District of Tofino, Mayor, Council, and staff for providing the property tax exemption for the visitor center. This exemption, it reduces our operating expenses, allows us to invest more funds in all of the things that we'll talk about now, which is things like visitor services, destination marketing, and our destination stewardship initiatives. They contribute to the success of all of our business community and really our community as a whole. Within the annual report, that's the second document, there are 3 charts that are related to visitation indicators. One showing overall for 2025, the annual average for occupancy in Tofino, which was overall 65% in 2025, up from 63% in 2024 and 2023. On the screen, specifically, we're looking at the monthly view. So this is the average occupancy over the course of 2025. You can see that visitation to Tofino is still very seasonal, and visitor demand drops significantly during the winter months. We're looking forward to looking at this chart in 2026 because we won't have to look at 2023 anymore with the road closure, that dip. And we'll be able to start comparing to very similar and steady years over year. The last time looking at that chart. So with that in mind, seasonality, we talked about our responsible marketing that we do. So Tofino, outside of the peak summer months, is of course what we target to address these seasonality challenges. That is our number one and really our only marketing priority that we have as an organization. We use a range of channels and programs to do this, including things like paid media, which is digital and print advertising, owned media, which is website and social media, earned media, which is travel media stories, and business development. So things like attracting groups, business meetings, incentive travel. Specifically, a few highlights in 2025 that were in the report is that we granted $47,500 in marketing support through our Tourism Tofino event marketing grant. So that's going directly to events and things happening within the District of Tofino to support our community and the marketing initiatives around those. We hosted 14 journalists and supported 11 media trips. All of those generated 92 placements in media outlets, which reached more than 77 million people while delivering close to 1 million in equivalent advertising spend. Another highlight is driving over 50,000 website users to our packages and offers page, which really that's the main page that showcases our member content, and overall 665,000 sessions on the website throughout all the pages. Lastly, under the marketing highlights is our visitor newsletter, which has been a target over the last couple of years because we didn't have it for so many years. We increased by 50% of the actual receivers of the newsletter with an average open rate of 51%, which if anybody knows email marketing campaigns, that is well over any email newsletter average. On the visitor services side, the visitor services team interacts with thousands of visitors at the visitor center, on the phone, by email. This not only gives us an opportunity to influence how they spend their time and money, but it also allows us the opportunity to relay all of our responsible visitor messaging. Some highlights in 2025 for visitor services was our new visitor center mural. It was an art installation with Tla-o-qui-aht artist Marika Swan. If you haven't been out to the visitor center, you see that, or at least driven by and enjoyed the view of it. Beautiful decals in the window. There's also inside a little write-up about that mural. You can come and read it. It's centered around ESOC as well, which is really neat. The beach wheelchairs were rented to 80 visitors for a total of 208 days. We have 3 wheelchairs now that are available at the visitor center, which we did have days where all 3 were boarded. We haven't had the demand yet for a 4th. We didn't have to turn anyone away, but the demand is there for the 3 of them, which has been great to be able to provide. The Washed Up Wednesdays collected over 2,000 pieces of debris just in 2025. That program has been running for many years. So to date, total, it's been 14,000 pieces of debris that have been collected through that Washed Up Wednesdays, which is visitors and residents. 40 businesses this past year participated in the Swap the Signs, generating 500 inclusive restroom route check-ins, and retail collaborations for local nonprofits have raised over $13,000 for local organizations in 2025. That would be another reason to go to the visitor center if you haven't, is to see all the local nonprofits highlighted, and all of that revenue goes back to those nonprofits directly. Destination stewardship is the last focus that we'll highlight today. We seek to make tourism a force for good for our community, and that's really what the stewardship side of things is. It means managing the impacts of tourism on the environment, on our First Nations communities, and on our residents of the District of Tofino. as we move towards a regenerative tourism model that results in a net benefit for people and environment in this special part of the world for generations to come. The specific highlights include the Tourism Tofino Scholarship Program, which we are now at $40,000 to be awarded to 4 students, which is very exciting. Our second economic impact study was published. That was the one that I highlighted in the financial report. That's available on our website, the industry page. There was a few other reports and documents that were published. We have our visitation details, lots of research and data. All of that is under resources on our industry site. But the economic impact study specifically, it talks about things like our visitation numbers that are accurate because we're looking at 2024. It's now the most up-to-date employment wages, GDP, and a lot more. 2025, as you all know, another highlight was a year of continued evolution for our organization, and I think just overall as a destination. And as a past board member and now as the new executive director, I'm really proud of the progress of the organization and how we've evolved. The industry partners and really just the broader community overall being able to work together and strengthen Tofino's visitor economy while protecting this place that we all love and care for so much. And I think the defining achievement of all of that was really the Tofino Destination Stewardship Plan. This milestone establishes clear, community-informed framework to guide tourism into the future, ensuring it supports environmental stewardship, culture, respect, community well-being, while contributing to our local, resilient local economy. I'm not going to do a full presentation of it. I know you already have, but I just really wanted to highlight it because it was obviously one of the significant things that the staff did in 2025. As you all know, it replaces the 2014 Tourism Master Plan. It was funded entirely by MRDT, as well as staff time from the district and Tourism Tofino. And I just wanted to say, especially because I wasn't on the staff at the time, a big congratulations to everyone that was involved. Both with the district and Tourism Tofino, the fact that it was adopted by both organizations and additionally adopted by Tla-o-qui-aht Chief Council is a significant milestone. And I've already seen just in the 5 months of being in the role, how it is already working and is really designed in a way that is going to affect strategies, policies, and really decisions for everyone that has a stake in tourism. The big piece and why I highlight this page specifically is the plan on the page, the fact that it's a short, plain language, decolonized document that anyone can pick up, understand, and be inspired by. I think is really the key here and what I hope that everybody has. I have it in my backpack to pull out and show everybody constantly at a local tourism conference in Kelowna with a bunch of BC tourism leaders. That was something that I was very proud to be able to show over and over again. And everybody that was asking what's going on, what's new in Tofino, because everybody wants to hear what's going on in Tofino. So this has been the exciting thing to share. On the organization side of things, the end of 2025, the board contributed to shaping the vision for Tourism Tofino's next strategic plan, which will be coming over probably my next few presentations, which is our 2027 to 2032 strategic plan. It's going to be reinforcing alignment with those community values and long-term priorities that I talked about with the Destination Stewardship Plan. And the last thing that happened in 2025, and it was actually the day, my first day and Brad's last day, was our governance structure was further strengthened through changes to our board composition. So it included the addition of a voting seat for Tla-o-qui-aht First Nation and a non-voting seat for Parks Canada. And this is also, I think, a really big, exciting step reflecting the continued commitment of meaningful partnership and inclusive decision-making. And so you can see here from this was at the end of 2025, this was our board of directors. The Parks Canada seat was filled right away. And after the May Tla-o-qui-aht Chief Council election, after May 12th, we will be filling that last seat, which we're very excited for. So last slide, the board also guided the organization through a leadership transition, ensuring continuity and stability during a period of change, which was me starting. And so I just wanted to let you all know at the District of Tofino that collaboration remains central to all of our work. We continue to work alongside all of our valued partners, Tla-o-qui-aht First Nations through Tla-o-qui-aht Travel Parks, the District of Tofino, Tofino Chamber of Commerce, Q&amp First Nation through Maftasis, Halhuthi Stewardship Society, Alberni Clackwood Regional District, Tla-o-qui-aht Biosphere Trust, Parks Canada, and many more organizations within our area. While progress has been strong, economic uncertainty and climate pressures and evolving visitor expectations required continued adaptability, and Tourism Tofino is well positioned to respond, supported by the committed board, our dedicated team, which you'll see up on the screen, and our very engaged community. Together, we're shaping a future for tourism in Tofino grounded in respect, responsibility, and long-term sustainability. That is all. I always like to, my last slide, if you don't receive our community news, this is everything that is our organization. So this is not the public newsletter that goes out to visitors. It is public, but this is more of the industry updates. So both for mayor and council, but anyone here, use that QR code to sign up for our newsletter to hear what we're doing as an organization.
Excellent.
Thank
Thank you
you.
very much. Good work. Great. See tourism change and grow, and some of the stuff that tourism has done and the team has done, it's been really excellent. So, I'll open it up to council for comments. No? No? All right, 2 thumbs up. Thanks so much.
Easy.
On item 10.2, zoning amendment bylaw number 1358. It's a third reading and adoption. Industrial way. No presentation, I see. All right, we'll move right on to questions from council. Seeing none, have a volunteer to read the recommendation before us.
Sure, I'll read that the District of Tofino zoning amendment bylaw number 1358, 2026 be read a third time.
Second by Councilor Thomas, all in favor? None opposed, motion is carried.
And that the District of Tofino zoning amendment bylaw number 1358, 2026 be adopted.
Councilor Thomas, all in favor? None opposed, motion is carried. Super. 10.3, we have financial plan bylaw. 2026 annual tax rate file. Exciting stuff. Okay.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. Today, we're going to look at the final draft of the 2026-2030 financial plan. During the presentation, please let me know of any questions that you may have. The agenda for this afternoon starts with timelines of the financial plan and the remaining date till adoption. Then we'll go over the changes incurred into the draft since the last meeting on the financial plan held on April 14th. We'll continue by looking at the funding sources for fiscal year 2026. And the last parts of the presentation, we'll go over the municipal property taxes for fiscal year 2026 and its composition. As we bring forward the final draft of the 2026-2030 financial plan today, the date remaining on the financial plan calendar being May 12th, when we will bring the 2026-2030 financial plan bylaw and the 2026 tax rate bylaw in front of council for adoption. Couple of changes since April 14, 2026. I will preface that by the changes relate to the requisitions owed to agencies. These are not changes related to the municipal taxes, taxes that are being kept in the municipality. These changes relate to the requisitions that are being paid to various agencies. First change, it's in relation to ACRD requisition since April 14, 2026, since last meeting. $7,000 was added to that requisition. To point that for the April 14, we used the 2025 letter received from ACRD, and since April 14, we received a formal letter for 2026 taxes, which included the 7,000. Hence, the 7,000 was added to the financial plan. And that line relates to costs related to contribution to planning. And it moved the requisition from 1,458,200 to 1,465,200 as of today.
Madam Chair, this is mostly for councils, and I know this is not directly to our municipal taxation, but this requisition is for land planning matters that the District of Tofino contributes to the ACRD. I have inquired about how much that $7,000 has been utilized, and I'm getting a report. I will be getting a report back coming. They didn't have the time to get that before this council meeting, but I have also asked for a full accounting of that $7,000. I know it sounds small, but it does impact the general budget. And then look at ways of either the documentation that this was an agreement that was made, and I think it was, we're going back quite a few years, and maybe I know Aaron's probably familiar with it, but I think it goes back to like 2018. It's quite a while. So I am looking into that, and I can report back to council as to the information that's provided around that.
Thank you. Other changes incurred since April 14, 2026, again, related to requisitions owed to other agencies, were updated police tax rates and updated school tax rates. To note again that for April 14th, the financial plan, we used the 2025 rates, as at that time we did not have the new rates for 2026, which were received since then. And on the next few slides, we will go over the two updates and how that translates into paid taxes. The police tax rates for 2026, again, received after April 14. In terms of the rate itself, we can see a 0.0932 increase from last year. That translates in 21,788 increase from the value present in the financial plan. Also included in the value collected in 2025. That is present on the screen to the council to see the difference between what was collected in 2025 and what will be collected in 2026. The difference being around $31,000. The impact on paid taxes between the value presented on April 14 versus today can be seen on these slides for a few examples in the residential class. With an increase since 2 weeks ago for the examples on the screen ranging from $5 to $47. In respect to the business property class, the increase, again, for the same time, considering the examples selected, the range is between $20 in one case all the way to $499 for another property. Moving on to updated school tax for 2026, the rate increase amounts to 1.6048. That represents an addition of $308,369. That was the updated value added since April 14 for school tax paid. Same as with the police tax, we are going through the same examples and showing how that affected taxes paid to agencies. For this group of examples for residential, we can see an increase of $47 in one case, going all the way to $430. And in respect to the business class group, for the same examples used on the previous example for police tax, the increases are ranging between $489 all the way to $11,917. Obviously, depending on the assessment value. To know that all the examples are based on the revised roll received at the end of March 2026. Moving on to the funding sources for 2026 fiscal year, we are starting with the general operating budget. In terms of grouping the sources, the group called other sources form the largest proportion of the revenue in a general operating budget at 58%. Biggest components of this group for 2026 are represented by RMI, Resort Municipality Initiative, at $4.9 million. MRTT, Municipal and Regional District Tax Program, that's $2.2 million, and the small community grants at $363,000. BC government continues to fund in fiscal year 2026 the $10 a day childcare program managed by District of Tofino, providing $760,000 in funding as it stands right now. Property taxes also form a large proportion of revenue for the general operating budget at almost 30%. And these services include corporate and financial administration, fire protection and emergency planning, recreation programming, public works, childcare, bylaw enforcement, planning, and infrastructure upgrades. Also, property tax revenue includes capital and infrastructure levy to be used for the repair, renewal, and addition of tangible capital assets. The user fees and charges, being a smaller percentage here, is at 12%. And the biggest components being parking revenue at $1.1 million and business licenses at $365,000. In terms of the water operating and its funding sources, the group name other sources is slightly bigger in proportion than the charges, than the user fees and charges. That group, the other sources, consists mainly of transfers from general operating and general operating surplus, water operating surplus, as well as water capital reserves and grants. For sewer operating funding sources, we have the user fees and charges representing the greatest portion of the revenue. those, represent the balance of revenue for the sewer operating budget. As a revenue source, user fees and charges permit the cost of operating, maintaining, and expanding the system to be distributed in a proportional system to the users of the system. And in relation to the other sources group, those consist mainly of grant funds, transfers from general operating and capital reserves as well. Putting all together, consolidating the three funds shown earlier, we can see that other sources makes up for 58% of the funds, followed by property tax at 23% and user fees and charges at 19%. Just as a reminder, based on the revised rule issued at the end of March, and the council directive of 7% municipal tax increase, the 2026 value base municipal tax increase, which can be seen as a second line there, is 353,000, with a 2026 base level taxation of 5.4 million. Non-market change value stayed the same as the previous presentation at 33,000, as well as the CNI levy at 1.9 and the other debts at 36,000. For a total of 7.4 million for the total 2026 municipal taxes. Looking on how that distributes between the different property classes, the breakdown of the 7.4 million that was shown in the previous slide can be the bigger two components being the residential class, which accounts for 49%. And business and other class with almost 48%. The other groups, obviously smaller recreation class contributes 2.3%, with utilities and light industrial class, both of them together being under 1%. And with that, I would like to put a vote of council that to recommendation and waiting for any comments or questions. Council.
Super, thank you very much, Mr. Romney. Open this up for any questions from the council. Screen, any comments? Council. Okay, Mr. Sawyer.
I just want to thank you for all your hard work meeting with council to make sure that we could keep the increases as low as possible and still make sure everything is covered that we've identified as priorities.
Thank you, Councilor. It's a teamwork and this is a work, reflected work of everybody in the district. Thank you.
Super. Great work. Thanks for that presentation. Okay, seeing no other comments and questions. The councilor like to offer to read the recommendation. Oh.
I move that District of Tofino 2026 to 2030 financial plan bylaw number 1360/2026 be introduced and read the first, second, and third time.
Here, for the comments, in favor. Unopposed, motion carried.
I move that District of Tofino 2026 annual tax rates bylaw number 1361/2026 be introduced and read the first, second, and third time.
Steer, for the comments, all in favor. Unopposed, motion carried. Excellent. Great. Okay, we're moving on to item 10.4. We have the asset management strategy. Mr. Kirkland, welcome back.
Hello, Mayor and Council. This evening, I will be presenting the district's proposed asset management strategy for information and discussion. The strategy builds upon the direction that Council has provided staff through the 2025 asset management policy. In parallel with directing staff to develop now adopted 2025 asset management policy, Council in the October 2025, the whole authorized staff to develop an asset management strategy. Strategy builds upon the policy and formally aligns the district's asset management approach with Asset Management BC principles. It provides a consistent framework for how we plan, maintain, renew, and invest in district assets. The strategy clarifies the ways we quantify the assets that the district manages. Tangible capital assets are valued using historical amortized costs in accordance with the Council's tangible capital asset policy. Working inventory assets, by contrast, are valued using their actual replacement costs. As we continue to build out this data set, working inventory assets will give us the ability to analyze risk of replacement affordability relative to the annual capital and infrastructure levy contribution. This will help ensure that the levy revenues remain aligned with asset renewal risk and support sustainable service delivery for the community over the long term. Each category has different life cycle expectations, costing requirements, and renewal triggers. Major focus in the strategy is identifying full service life cycle costs, not just replacement costs, but operations, maintenance, and risk throughout the whole life cycle of an asset. The strategy also outlines the condition assessment process that staff will use to evaluate asset health and prioritize investment throughout the assets profile. Implementation is structured around an asset implementation team with clearly defined roles and responsibilities. The strategy includes a mission statement and a vision statement for asset management to ensure consistency across all divisions and subsequent departments within the district. It also aligns asset management with Council's strategic planning process so that long-term decision-making reflects service level, risk, and affordability. This will create a coordinated, organization-wide approach. Key deliverable under the strategy is the development of category-specific asset management plans. Plans are developed and continually updated for all of the district's core service delivery areas. Each plan will include condition, risk, life cycle costing, and renewal forecasting for capital investment prioritization. These plans will form the foundation for long-term financial planning as it is phased and integrated into work plans. The strategy supports long-term financial planning across multiple time horizons, 20 years, 50 years, and 100 years, depending on the asset class and sequence build out. The long-term financial planning will build out in those longer terms in a phased approach as more accurate data is known collected. Life cycle costing and renewal profiles will inform these forecasts. The wastewater treatment plant asset inventory provides the district's first complete baseline of having a detailed asset renewal profile on a specific asset, which informs down the line detailed replacement costs. Asset classes will be integrated as their category-specific asset management plans are completed. Also included in the strategy includes provisions for development of a natural capital asset inventory. This will establish a framework for identifying, valuing, and protecting natural systems such as streams, wetlands, forests, and shoreline areas. Integration of natural assets will follow Asset Management BC guidance. The plan will also identify pressures and vulnerabilities within the natural assets, for example, where stormwater infrastructure interacts with fish-bearing streams. Tonight's recommendation is for council to receive the strategy for information and discussion. Throughout 2026, staff will be updating several key plans, updating some information in the fleet asset management plan, developing a transportation infrastructure master plan as what was included in the current financial plan, and developing a water asset management plan. And then throughout into the long term, the strategy does include a more detailed implementation schedule, outlining the sequencing for future asset management plans. So with that, I will leave the recommendation on the screen and open the floor up for any questions and comments.
Great. Questions first from council. Mr. Steer.
That's through the chair. I'll have comments later, but just a couple of generalized questions. And once again, I just want to start out. This is an incredible document, and I'm very much supportive of the work that's gone into it and the way that it's been structured and grouping the assets by service area, et cetera, et cetera. As I went through the report, there was just for clarification, there was in the you delineated it through a series of asset management plans by service areas. And then what you just talked about, a phased, you're going to phase based starting with essential and higher risk service areas. And I think you've outlined a little bit in the report. I'm just wondering how you define a high risk service. Does that question make sense?
I think so. Through the chair, thank you for the question.
There was essential and higher risk service areas. And
yeah, when we look at higher risk areas, we're going to look at that in parcel with what are essential services with like emergency services and water, sanitary would be our higher risk service areas. If it answers it,
higher risk was, you know, trying to figure out the difference between the two. So
so very closely mapped out and in parallel with each other. Does that help to answer?
yeah, I think to a certain degree, yeah. Thank you.
I have a comment.
If it's okay, question, yeah. We could probably go into the comments. Yeah, it might go better into the feedback / comment.
Feedback / comments. Okay. I have a comment, so I don't have questions, but it doesn't look like there's any more questions, but you know, at local government leadership's academy, I guess it is LGLA, this year, of course, asset management is a huge component of that conference and a huge component for many municipalities. And I did geek out and looked at, I took a survey at some of the municipalities across BC, took a snapshot of 160, some of the 161 of them. And I just want to say that I'm so proud of Tofino and the asset management, not only the financial state that we're in for asset management, but the headway that Tofino has made through the policy and strategy is just incredible. So good work. It's a good achievement, and there's a lot of communities that I'm sure will be looking at this kind of thing for some leadership. So thank you very much. That's all I have to say on that. Councillor Steer.
Thank you. Through the track. Yeah, it relates to the in terms of the asset management plan implementation schedule. And I really want to commend you once again on the work that was done on this asset management plan. And then through those, you identified some of the medium-term priorities. And I just want to go back to some of in the public consultation process, not only here, but certainly in our Parks and Rec master plan, where parks and green spaces are value community assets, natural areas, including forests, beaches, creeks, important assets that support environmental stewardship. And I'm super glad to see that the natural capital assets have been included. I'm just wondering, with that amount of emphasis and focus within the community in terms of those midterm priorities, going down the list, it was 2028, the natural capital inventory project, which is a couple of years out. And then there was also the rationale to better inform, align with it. And then there was also the 2027 to start in that inventory process. And I'm wondering, in terms of the prioritization, if there's a consideration of moving that schedule a little faster in terms of that natural gas. And I know, and the reason I say that because it has been identified clearly in the through many of the community processes and consultations. And I'm just curious as to that if that could be a possibility when you got a little in terms of that implementation schedule.
Great question through the chair, and I may lean to support as I navigate answering it. My colleagues here through the chair, like there's a 30 by 30 initiative that is ongoing, which I think could be is a good preliminary foundational work to support moving into the natural capital asset inventory process. Alongside of that, I think there's also legislation from more senior government that's probably going to come into play to help catch that up and to bring us through in that process. So there may be opportunities to boost, bolster, or speed up the inventory of all the district's natural assets, but it's certainly something to answer the question that we could take away and review internally in the team.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Super. See no further comments or questions. Would the council like to read the recommendation reports?
Water asset management strategy, effect of the Pembroke Pond staff report for the asset management strategy dated April 28th, 2026. Be received for information and discussion. Or discussion.
Thomas, any further comments? All in favor? None opposed, motion is carried. Thank you, Mr. Kirkland. Okay, moving on to item 10.5, housing needs assessments. This is for the third reading. 12.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Tonight I'm going to present to you third reading of our official community plan amendment bylaw number 1290.02, 2025. Slides are coming. Right. As a refresher, this report, or the report associated with the presentation, recommends amending the OCP for the purpose of integrating data from our 2024 interim housing needs assessment to ensure alignment with provincial legislation. It also updates our growth projections associated with our raw water supply. Bit of background, the work received permission to proceed at the September 9th, 2025 meeting, council meeting. Then received first reading on December 9th, 2025, second reading on February 24th of this year. Public hearing was held on March 17th. I should note no changes have been proposed since first reading. No written submissions were received from the public prior to public hearing, and no members of the public spoke or provided comments during the public hearing. Regarding community engagement, we referred this amendment to the Tla-o-qui-aht First Nation, School District 70, and the ACRD, all of which provide comment. In addition to the targeted consultation process, this project continues to be hosted up to Tofino. With that, there's the recommendation.
Excellent. We'll see, read it through many times now. Any questions? Seeing none, the councillor would like to read the recommendation. Oh.
I move that District of Tofino official community plan amendment bylaw number 1290.02, 2025 the third time.
Second way, Sloman, further comments, all in favor? None opposed, motion is carried. All right, moving on to item 10.6, Tofino Recreation Master Plan. You know what, I'm gonna just take a 2-minute recess, if that's all right. Councilor McMaster. Excellent. Okay. Welcome, Ms. Hutch.
Hello. How are you all doing tonight? Great. I'm gonna not be up here for long, but I will introduce Steve Stufa from RC Strategies, who has been with us virtually, but is joining us for the first time in person to present the draft of the master plan for recreation and parks. So I'm gonna flip it over to Steve and we're here for any questions or comments after.
Excellent. Welcome in person.
Oh, good afternoon. Yeah. Great. Yeah, appreciate having some time on your agenda. It's exciting to have the opportunity to present the second draft of the Recreation and Parks Master Plan. In terms of a bit of an overview of the presentation here, really kind of threefold. Give you a bit of an update on where we're at with the process and recap sort of how we've got to the point that we're at right now. Present a bit of an overview of kind of the structure, the contents, the bones of the master plan. And then thirdly, we'll summarize some of the recommended next steps for council's consideration. So obviously the master plan's a really thorough, big document. So we've kind of triaged, if you will, or curated some of the key points to talk to you here this evening about. So where are we at with the project? Before we get there, I just wanted to kind of reiterate the purpose and objectives of the master plan. So, why were we retained to do this work? Why did the district undertake this work? Really, there's kind of four buckets or objective buckets. The first being just to understand the current state of recreation and parks in Tofino. So, what are the strengths? What are the gaps? What are the opportunities? What are the sort of kind of important community needs for parks and recreation? Secondly, kind of translate that into some recommended priorities and focus areas, recognizing that like most communities or jurisdictions, priorities need to be set. And certainly the district probably can't undertake everything that it would like to, or that even that there's good needs rationale for. So what are those key priorities? Related to that, ultimately provide yourselves as decision makers and your administration with a point of reference that you can use to inform future resource allocation and staff planning and all those types of things. And ultimately ensure that kind of those decisions are made based on good solid rationale. So how did we get to where we are today? So just to recap the process, because it has been a fairly long process. We started out the project in fall 2024 and spent the first number of months, about 6 months, doing research and engagement. So took a fairly deep dive into, as I said earlier on, the current state of parks and recreation in Tofino, using a number of different tactics for research and engagement. We used that information to then set some strategic direction, and that occurred through a handful of meetings with the Recreation Advisory Committee, presenting to council, and some internal workshops. That led us to ultimately having a draft master plan in the spring of 2025. We got some feedback from you, so areas were flagged that required a bit more attention or building out and so forth. So we spent really about the last 10 to 12 months working with staff, and I'll just give them a bit of a shout out for all their efforts in the process here as well, to come to a place where we have a refined, updated draft master plan to share with you here this afternoon, almost evening. So before we get into the master plan, just to recap or refresh a little bit again on what some of those inputs were, and I won't go through all of these here, but on the left there, summary of the different research analysis that the team undertook. So we looked at how current facilities are currently used, which are maybe at capacity, not at capacity, look at population and demographics, reviewed previous planning, because obviously a recreation and parks master plan needs to kind of jive and align with other planning. And then on the right, obviously community engagement was a significant kind of effort on behalf of both staff and ourselves to really explore with residents and groups and other individuals what the current state of parks and recreation is. And we wanted to do that in a number of different ways, recognizing that we need to try to touch all corners of the community as best we can. And if you kind of add up all those numbers, it's about 800 unique kind of touch points with the community through the surveys and the virtual mapping tools and so on. So, obviously we would love to be able to talk to every resident in the community, but 800 touch points gives us a pretty good sample size to be able to make some conclusions in terms of, what's trending, what residents see as priorities, what their levels of satisfaction are, and so forth. So then to get into an overview of the actual master plan, so kind of transitioning into the content of the master plan, there's really kind of three key terms that I'll just introduce for the master plan. The first being 3 goals. So those goals are kind of those overarching foundations for recreation and parks, or another way to put that would maybe be, why is the district in the business of recreation and parks? Like, why do we lose money on providing recreation and parks? Those 3 goals are intended to provide some kind of goalposts around that a little bit. And just to kind of recap on what those 3 goals are, they are optimizing infrastructure, optimizing service delivery, and optimizing land resources. So those are kind of buckets for recreation and parks services. Within each of those 3 goal areas, we have a number of strategies, and those strategies are kind of those direction-based statements that suggest kind of a path forward into the future. So again, organized under the 3 goals are those strategies, and then each strategy has at least 1, and in some cases 3, 4, 5 different associated actions. There's 42 actions in total in the master plan, and those actions are kind of tactics or specific initiatives to implement the strategies. So that's, for those that have had a chance to dig into the master plan, that's kind of the sort of the bones and the structure of the master plan. Obviously, implementing a master plan is a key thing that we need to provide some direction on as well. And for each of the actions, and I just put a screenshot up here, there's an implementation summary table associated with each action. So we suggest some timing, short, medium, or long term. We suggest or outline some resourcing in terms of what that kind of range could be for both capital, as well as what the operating cost impacts. And there's a legend associated with all the $ symbols, and then other planning resources required. So again, just an example of what the implementation charts look at, or tables look like in the master plan. But obviously, implementation of a master plan is an ongoing occurrence and something that staff are going to continue to have to update and refresh over time as things change and different resource considerations come into play. So with that, I'll go through at a high level some of the key strategies and actions from the master plan. And again, this certainly isn't all of them. We just pulled out the ones under a few categories that we think were potentially most pertinent to share here or highlight this evening. And they're organized kind of by area of service, or in some cases, area of amenity. So the first one I'll start on is aquatics. Obviously through the engagement, and this would be no surprise to council, there was a lot of feedback and a lot of kind of demand for increased aquatic services. And the guidance that the strategies and actions provide in the master plan kind of put it into sort of 3 categories here. So the first being to undertake a feasibility study to better explore aquatics options specifically in Tofino. So looking at things like cost, site options, and other viability considerations to deliver aquatics for residents of Tofino, looking at both indoor and outdoor options. So kind of taking sort of a Tofino specific look at aquatic services. Related to that, as covered off by the second point there, as part of that feasibility study, there's kind of an opportunity to look at the provision of aquatics, both as a service locally, but also revisiting the provision of aquatics regionally. And obviously earlier this evening, we heard from a representative from the Multiplex Society. And, that's an initiative that the district's been engaged in various ways for some time. And what we're really suggesting in the master plan is if the feasibility study kind of reiterates or revalidates regional provision of aquatics as a good move forward approach or an option, that the district should engage in that initiative in a handful of different ways. And they're kind of listed there under the sub bullets. So dialogue with the other potential project partners to explore funding models and approaches. So continue to look at things like grants or, ultimately how that could be funded. Secondly, continue to provide letters of support for grant applications. And then the third sub bullet there, which I think is really quite important, is we're suggesting that the district should encourage its partners to update previous planning. So the last study that was done for the multiplex is a little bit dated now. And certainly since that last study was done, cost escalation, unfortunately, in terms of the cost to build and operate that facility. Potential facility has escalated, likely escalated quite a bit. And obviously, any sort of future decision making, we would suggest needs to be considering kind of updated cost numbers, as well as looking at other elements of that potential project, like getting a bit more clarity around governance and management structures, potentially even revisiting kind of the phasing that was outlined in the last concept plans as well. So that's the direction in terms of kind of major potential aquatics infrastructure development. But as the last bullet alludes to there as well, there's certainly a good rationale for the district further investigating some interim solutions to enhance aquatics opportunities for residents. So there's a number of actions in the master plan pertaining to that, which include looking at external partnerships with hotel providers that do offer aquatics infrastructure, looking at ocean-based swimming lessons and potentially expanding that as a service offering. And then also revisiting facilitating transportation to Port Alberni, which has been done kind of on a sporadic basis over the last number of decades. So just to kind of summarize aquatics, because I know it's a key area of attention, essentially continuing to explore providing aquatics infrastructure, either locally or regionally, and then looking at some other solutions to meet aquatics needs while kind of fundraising and resourcing occurs for those efforts. Moving on to indoor programming spaces. So there's a handful of strategies and actions pertaining to that. The first being just to look at renovating the community hall to improve functionality of that space, as well as accessibility and placemaking appeals. So the master plan identifies a handful of areas where that could occur based on some of the direction we got from the architects on our team. Secondly, looking to develop a business case and supporting advocacy and funding and a funding strategy to further develop the community hub. So again, recognizing that efforts have been undertaken or tried in the past around that facility, suggesting that continues. There is certainly a need for indoor multi-purpose space. And kind of as part of that, we're also suggesting that there likely needs to be some updating to the previous planning and costing for much the same reasons I talked about with aquatics, that there is a different cost environment now, unfortunately, and there's a need to kind of revisit some of that work that is a few years outdated, not all that outdated, but a few years outdated. And then lastly, looking to continue to partner with the school district as the district has successfully done in the past in terms of gaining access to the gym and exploring other amenity partnerships as well. Moving on to outdoor recreation and sport amenities. So developing a wheeled sport facility. Obviously, the current or the previous bike park was removed, and we're suggesting that there needs to be some planning and ultimately a plan put in place to replace that type of amenity. But what the master plan also did highlight or does highlight is that there probably needs to be a bit further engagement on the exact type of wheeled sports amenity that would be the best fit for the community. Is that a pump track? Is that a bike, some other type of bike skills park? And so on. So the master plan suggests some further planning and community engagement, and even looking at how that type of amenity could be delivered and operated sort of beyond the scope of the master plan. Obviously, the Tough City Skate Park is a highly valued asset, so just continued asset management and reinvesting in that space. And then also looking at village green planning and renewal, which is an action in the master plan. And also exploring related to that lighting for the sport court and the skate park as well. So there's potentially some good rationale for lighting that space, but there's also a few other things that need to be a little bit further reviewed, potentially things like light pollution and even kind of the cost benefit of lighting that space. So would evening use ultimately justify kind of the cost of that amenity addition? So the master plan sort of highlights that as a potential investment, but identifies that a bit more review is needed as well. Moving on to parks. So a number of actions around parks, and just to highlight a few. The first is just developing a village green concept plan that prioritizes improvements to that obviously central and really key space in the community, looking at what the phasing of those improvements might be. And then looking at how to sort of better integrate or better kind of animate and connect that space with its surrounding environment, which we would suggest is a pretty significant opportunity here to even get more benefit out of that space. We've identified 3 community park spaces that warrant a bit more kind of concept planning and potential investment. 3rd Street Park, just across the street here, Berthe Park, and then Centennial Park as well. So investment should be undertaken in all parks, but those are 3 that we've highlighted as being a particular focus. Establishing more community gardens. So when we went through the community engagement, community gardens was certainly the demand for and need for expanded community gardens was really highlighted. So suggesting continuing to look at those opportunities, but also ensuring that there's a clear management and governance plan around community gardens to ensure that, you know, if the district does add more of those types of spaces, that there's sort of a plan in place to ensure that they're operated and managed for success. And then kind of the last 2 points there under parks. Obviously playgrounds, something that you're always kind of renewing over time. And really what we're getting at there is that rather than just kind of always automatically renewing like for like, look for opportunities to kind of increase play diversity and appeal in the community. So look for those opportunities to add new types of play structures. When you do have to replace a playground, kind of look at maybe what you have a bit of an oversupply of, right? Like, do we have too many younger children playgrounds, and maybe there's an opportunity to have an older children playground to meet a gap? Like, those are the kind of things we should always be thinking about as we're renewing our playground inventory. And that would probably lead in a little bit to some of those park plans and the village green planning as well. And then the last one on here, pilot some dog off leash locations. And we know again that the district's done some engagement and has given some thought to this demand, which was again reiterated through the engagement we did for the master plan. And we do identify 3 potential pilot sites that are listed there on the screen as being potentially good candidates for one, if not a couple of those, to be pilot sites for a dog off leash, piloted dog off leash location. Then a couple more slides there, and then I'll have to take any questions. So the master plan also identifies or highlights some key service delivery areas, and I would just mention that this isn't to suggest that these things aren't being done well or aren't occurring. In a lot of cases they are, but you know, really in a lot of instances we want to re-embed and advance things that the district's already doing quite successfully. So collaborating with TFN, you know, that's happening, and there's obviously more opportunity to do that around recreation and culture moving forward as well. There was a presentation earlier on around asset management, and I would say we try to kind of hit home the importance of asset management within the recreation and parks realm as best we can throughout the master plan. While we always want new stuff, certainly there's a significant portfolio of assets that we need to protect. Working regionally to facilitate a critical mass, like every smaller community, you know, sometimes programming for things like team sports is limited, or even fitness programs is limited by the fact that we don't have a huge population to draw from. So, you know, working with the District of Tla-o-qui-aht and other First Nations communities to create some of that critical mass is something that should continue to be explored on an ongoing basis. Continue to support and partner with arts and cultural organizations. I would say the district does that quite well, and we're kind of advancing that moving forward. And then the last point there, the master plan also provides a tool, kind of a decision tree that can help staff determine or make decisions around programming. Should we provide something? Should we retire a program? Should we provide it directly versus through a partnership? So the master plan does give some guidance on programming. And then lastly, there's a handful of other kind of future planning and policy areas that the master plan recommends as part of the implementation and future steps beyond the master plan. And just to touch on a few of those, the master plan suggests developing a trails plan. So trails is obviously a significant part of the recreation and leisure opportunity here in Tofino. And that trails plan we're suggesting should be pretty comprehensive, but also pretty tactical, and look at both kind of on land as well as what we've termed water trails. So recognizing that a lot of trails facilitate access to the water, and to some degree, water is a trail system in of itself. But also looking at kind of accessing, how do we access from parking lots to the water? Looking at dog off leash use of trails. So, you know, are there trails that we could look at as potentially piloting for dog off leash or not? And then also looking at opportunities around both Tonquin Park and the trail system and expansion, some prioritization of infrastructure within that kind of signature trail network. Developing a washroom strategy. Washrooms are important both in terms of kind of equity for, young parents and older folks and in terms of accessing parks and trails. So we think a washroom strategy should be undertaken. A review and update of the public art policy. Ensuring the park needs and considerations are included in a future real estate strategy that we understand that the district is interested or has on the books to do. Supporting the exploration of a land trust, and then advancing the park and trail development, looking at alignment and consideration of 30 by 30 conservation targets. Kind of an exciting development around that is about 3 weeks ago, the federal government released its nature strategy, which actually provides some really good implementation guidance around how all levels of government can align with 30 by 30. So I think that's a really big development in terms of how to ensure the park system here in Tofino kind of helps achieve those objectives. Excuse me. So in a nutshell, those are some of the key focus areas for the strategies and actions in the master plan. And then there's really kind of 2 next steps that we're recommending to bring the master plan to a conclusion here. The first being that we've committed to reviewing the master plan with the public, and all the groups gave us input when we met with them and when we gathered feedback. That was something that we said we would do, is to kind of go back to them with the draft and give them another opportunity to provide some input, what they like or what they maybe think we missed on. And then based on that feedback, bring a final master plan to you as council for your consideration. So appreciate the time here this evening to present that. Hopefully I was able to capture some of the salient points for the master plan. There's a lot of content there. So again, couldn't touch on everything, but wanted to hit on a few of the really key points. So thanks, and happy to take any questions or comments.
Super. All right, I'm going to open up to council for questions. And if you have a comment that goes along with the question, go ahead. But don't put them on spot. Put us on spot. Go ahead, council.
Well, thank you. Through the chair, and the chair did point out to me brevity is divine. So I think the question I'm going to just for maybe just a comment in general, because I don't think there was a specific question that were there. So and I thank you once again. And I've been sitting with the Recreation Advisory Committee and the presentations there, and that's been extremely valuable. And the input, of course, of that advisory committee has been paramount. And you outline the intent of the plan is to guide the investment in park schedule over a decade. And so that brought me to the strategies under there, and there was a number 10 listed, I believe, and there is, or that was under the infrastructure, but there's 42 actions that are listed there, and over a decade. I think as council, it's more for council to look at that pragmatic approach to what is achievable within that decade, limited resourcing, certainly at a staffing level. We've been fortunate enough, this council has made a decision around our paid parking revenues to include recreation as one of the prime expenditures there. So that gives us some room for flexibility in terms of developing some of those action plans. And I think there's opportunity once again for the advisory to be useful in those areas. So there's a lot of information there. There's a lot of actions in there, but a very pragmatic approach for our council to be able to look at what is achievable in those timeframes with the resources that we have there. So specifically, and you brought up aquatics infrastructure, and without question, over the years, it has become it has been front and center. And I'm going back when I was on the Recreation Commission back in 2008, where we commissioned a full feasibility study at the time. So this has been a long-standing within the community. And you outlined in there, and I wrote it all down. And so for sake of brevity, I'm not going to go over it all again, but you did point out early on in the presentation the importance of collaboration between a number of TFN, SD70, and of course, some of our other community partners. And so the aquatics facility study option to explore those aquatic options study and plans also presents the opportunity to revisit potential approaches for providing aquatics. And I thank you for that. I think that will be important for council to be considering that. And of course, you mentioned the West Coast Multiplex Society, and I just wanted to point out that it is a service of the ACRD, a bylaw that was created back in 2012. So it's already committed the district to some operational funding models there. So for council, those are going to be important considerations when we look at what is achievable in terms of aquatic, because you clearly pointed out in the master plan, the capital and operating costs are significant. And I've been to, unfortunately, my day job, I go to a number of remote communities along the coast, and those that do have pools, that is a huge undertaking for those communities, especially small and remote communities. So recognize that, and thank you for that in there. I'm going to leave it there for now. And I just wanted to also emphasize before I leave off this is mostly all for council is once again, there's, a lot of this is emphasized on sport and that type of, when we define recreation in the broader sense. And I was glad to see near the end of the presentation, the recognition of what arts plays in recreation, and certainly as some of us are aging, how that becomes more of an opportunity for community members to engage in recreation in that broader definition that you outlined. So thank you for the report, and I look forward to seeing the final draft and having it presented to the advisory committee again.
Great. Any questions? Go ahead, Councillor Sloman.
Yeah, I think the draft is really great. I think it's come a long way since the first draft. My question was regarding the bike park. I remember sitting on the advisory committee, I believe it was there, we discussed how a pump track is more suitable to beginner users, and what is the other one?
Like bike skills park.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so when you present to the community for feedback, will there be some sort of education on that of like how that will, like how that affects user groups?
Yeah, through the chair, Councillor Sloman. We have to kind of frame out what that community review is going to look like a little bit. I think what we're suggesting in the master plan is really for the district with whoever else supports that work to kind of go out and really sort of dig into what the wheeled sports demand and needs and benefits are. So I think through the master plan, we're kind of opening the door for that work, but we can certainly provide some definition around what those different types of amenities are. I wouldn't necessarily say that one is better for beginners than others. It really depends on how you design it and kind of the progressions that are like, you can design both an introductory bike skills park and pump track and other types of amenities, as well as advanced ones, and have beginner, intermediate, and advanced progressions within each of those types of amenity spaces. It really depends on the site you have available and sort of how you design it and who the focus is. And we're kind of suggesting that that's sort of a next step of work that needs to occur with the right expertise around those amenity types.
Can I do one follow?
Yeah.
My next question was, when we're renewing with what we need, as we said, we have a really young adult population here who don't often come to consultation things. How do you recommend we involve them? Or do you have?
Yeah, through the mayor. Yeah, it's a great question. I think what we tried to do certainly through the first round of engagement and will again is have a few different ways for input. So, some people like the surveys, right? And then other people would prefer to have more of sort of a conversational approach, and obviously user groups, we can engage with them a little bit more directly. We had an online mapping tool the first go around. So, try to get the word out in a number of different ways with staff support and try to give a number of different ways to provide that input. So we'll look to do that again.
Councillor McMaster.
Yeah, it's glad you brought up the problems with lighting the sports courts, pickleball, basketball. As a pickleball player, in one way I kind of like the idea, but I'm also realistic, knowing that it rains a lot here. So it doesn't matter if you light them, you can't play on the courts if they're wet. So was there any consideration given to trying to put a bubble or something over the sports courts, which would incorporate lighting, and then that would give greater access even during the rainy days?
Through the mayor to Councillor McMaster, Yeah, we would suggest that that would be something to look at as part of that kind of overall Village Green concept plan exercise that we recommend. You know, when you do cover a space like that, there's obviously the pro, as you mentioned, which would be creating sort of a space that would be sheltered from the rain. But you know, it would also take away sunlight during the months where there is sunlight, and everybody likes that. So I think that's something to explore as part of that Village Green planning or other initiatives. You know, there's an aging sports box at the school. You know, that maybe there's an opportunity to look at kind of covering that space in kind of collaboration with the school district. So it's a good point in terms of covered space, but I think kind of future planning would want to look at the pros and cons of that a little bit more.
Great, thank you.
I think you Clulet is as a plan for
They are, yeah.
yeah, so like that's next door. Big Laurel Steel there. I have a comment. I just have a comment. It's mostly for council, but it touches on something that you did say is that you know, we just did asset management. You know, we doubled, tripled, sometimes quadrupled our spending on machines and trails and all these things like that, and even going so far as to talk about asset management for trees and natural assets. We don't call it losing money. We call it investing in our assets. And I'm just going to say that our single biggest, most important asset is people. And so I don't see, in the same way we talk about assets, I think that what we're doing is we're spending money. Yes, we're investing money. And I think in the last 4 or 5 years, Tofino has doubled, almost doubled or more its investment in recreation, and the social return on that investment has been huge. You know, it's pickleball courts, bike parks, all this stuff is skateboard facilities, the school district. So I just want to point that out. I see it as losing money, I see it as investing in the greatest asset, and it comes back to us. So comment, and you know, it's wonderful that we have dedicated funding that isn't property tax for recreation. So I think it's a great mix, it's a great time. It's a great draft. Really appreciate the changes in the work you've done. So that's my comment, and I really don't have any questions. I'm just happy to see it, and I think it's. Councilor Stewart, do you have more?
No, I think that's great. I think you summed up what I was going to finish with in terms of our investments in our.
Super. So I look forward to it. Thank you. Okay. We have a recommendation. Councilor, go ahead.
That the report titled Tofino Recreation Parks Master Plan Draft 2 dated April 28th, 1970 be received for information and referred to the Recreation Advisory Committee public for final communication.
Second by Councilor Steer. Any further questions? All in favor? None opposed, motion is carried. Excellent. Presentation. 10.7 temporary use permit, wild pods. Mr. Shorthall. Or Mr. Look at that, it went, Mr. Pearl went out in view.
Thank you. Good evening again. Tonight, for this presentation, I'm going to share with you a new temporary use application for 150 Grace Road. Since 2018, this site's been home to a set of 6 geodesic tensile structures, collectively known as wild pods. This new TUP for the site is to seek approval to operate a campground development that offers cultural experiences and tourist accommodation. The Tla-o-qui-aht First Nation has assumed the business, and the business is intending to function as a satellite extension of their Tla-o-qui-aht RV resort. So the purpose the purpose of this TUP essentially is to allow use not permitted by the zoning bylaw and specify conditions under which the use may exist. Here's the site's here's the location of 150 Grace. It's currently zoned Grace Point Comprehensive Development District. Current use is tourist accommodation, and it's 8 acres. For a bit of background, the first TUP issued in 2018 for glamping style tourist accommodation use. That TUP was renewed in 2021 for 3 additional years. And then the renewed permit expired in October of 24. Permanent development pursuits for the site have proved to be challenging due to our raw water shortage. So the business's new owner, by the way of a 3 to 6 year temporary use operation, is intending to generate revenue to acquire the land from the current landowners. So TUP, just to reiterate the statutory authority here, TUP allows a short-term use not compliant under the zoning bylaw. It's regulated by Division 8 of the LGA. It can be issued between 1 to 3 years and renewed once. And it's intended to be temporary. The use is intended to be temporary, not long-term. And each TUP is evaluated on a case-by-case basis. So the location of what currently is known as Grice Point is historically and culturally significant to Tla-o-qui-aht and to Tofino, as we heard earlier this evening. Grice Point is known as Natchik's traditional place name for Tofino. Our OCP weaves in reconciliation into its vision, its principles, governance approach, land use policies, economic development, infrastructure planning, et cetera. And these 2 excerpts from OCP are 2 examples really that demonstrate alignment for this TUP. Second excerpt in particular I'd like to read out is to work with the Tla-o-qui-aht First Nation on land and economic development opportunities within the district. That's policy number 14 in our OCP. So small chart here. Even though the site plan provided with this TUP application reflects the current use on the site, there are differences. The current zoning remains and permits a range of tourist-oriented and marine-related uses, including resort condominiums, marine uses. Further, the CDGP zone permits up to 25 tourist accommodation units if developed. The 6 geodesic domes remain, but the TUP could be amended at any time. We can come back should Tla-o-qui-aht First Nation wish to expand the physical infrastructure of the site. Otherwise, should a renewal be sought, the applicant could seek some amendments at the renewal time. So there is overlap between the use of tourist accommodation, which was previous use, and campground. Each refer to each other within the zoning bylaw. However, they are different uses. Furthermore, the campground use is more in line with the operations and development goals of the applicant. So the primary piece really that sets this application apart from the previously granted temporary use is the cultural offerings associated with its renewed existence and new use. These will showcase both Tofino and Tla-o-qui-aht pride and align well with our destination stewardship plan. Around the issue of water, the applicant does not propose any expansion or intensification of its current use this time. And as such, there's no increase in demand on water, sewer, or municipal services. District staff have reviewed the proposal with infrastructure and public works as well as fire, and they're satisfied that this use can continue and be accommodated within this current service capacity. To speak to the community engagement that took place, we're mandated to provide written notices, hand-delivered surrounding the property, which has been done, as well as the public notice published in the Westerly. Staff provided 3 options for recommendation for consideration, and before you use the recommended.
Excellent. Thank you, Mr. Wells. Great. Great option. I'm going to look to council for questions. Mrs. Bowman.
I understand that this wouldn't affect any upcoming developments because it's outside, it would just be temporary in use, but my question is regarding the long-term use of the land. If they would like to come forward, would any of the available water that we've set aside for the addition be allowable to be used in this development in the future?
Thank you. Through the chair, the OCP amendment that just heard third reading earlier this evening, would offer a pathway for that to take place. We would need to have, we need to have an assessment and understanding of what would need to be used. And then there could be motion passed to have that water go to such a development on the site, for instance.
Questions, Councillor Steer?
Yes, thank you through the chair. Yeah, very, very supportive of this particular TUP. Just a quick question in terms of generally with the TUPs, there's often a bridge to a rezoning or a zoning amendment. Is that something that's being contemplated within this particular TUP in terms of its longer term development?
Potentially, we'll be revisiting that with the applicant in 6 to 9 months time to see if that's a quicker path to having this type of use within that zone.
Super. Looks like council has no more questions. Any comments? Very supportive of this, so let's let you off the hook. Councillor DeMaster, anything you would like to add?
I remember when the pods were first being discussed, being put in, there was a lot of concern about what the area would look like coming in from the ocean or the inlet. And I mean, that is one of the reasons why the pods were green as opposed to white, so it didn't stick out so much. So my only concern is, are we still going to be able to preserve the look when it becomes a campground?
Through the chair, to answer that question, there are no proposed changes to the site at this time. Should there be permanent development changes pursued in the future, we would have to come back and amend the TUP to accommodate that.
Okay, that's good. Thank you.
Just question to make sure that I'm understanding what Councillor McMaster was asking about. So they're asking for this TUP because it's different from the first ones they received, but essentially the wild pods will be acting as tents in the campground. Is my understanding correct there?
Through the chair, if I understand your question, we would classify the geodesic domes as tents, yes.
Okay. Any other questions? Clarity? Seeing none, you have a volunteer to read the recommendation.
Sure. That staff be authorized to issue the temporary use permit TUP 0226 attached as Appendix 1 to the staff report titled Temporary Use Permit Wild Pod 150 Rice Road dated April 28th, 2026 for a period of 3 years to permit a campground use.
Second by Councillor Thomas. Any other comments? All in favor? None opposed, motion carried. Great. Moving on to 13, business initiated by council members. Do we have any committee or external appointment reports? Councillor Steer and Councillor Thomas.
It's just a quick report to Wicked Community School Society. We had our meeting on April 15th. And just quickly, just to go over, things are going very well. There was a free play grant that's going to provide some 75 days of busing. That was for after school programming, which is great. Allows our kids to be able to participate in the programming and have safe rides home. And there's, a new treasurer at SD 70 that we're working with there, former treasurer of the ACRD. And just 11 programs running right now, very popular, all well attended, from everything from skateboarding to chess clubs. That's that.
Super. Councillor Thomas.
I guess I had two quick ones. First was just to speak to the council grant committee meeting we had earlier this month. This year was particularly difficult because it was so oversubscribed. We had asks for more than double the amount of grant money that we had. So in previous years where I've sat on that committee, it's been maybe undersubscribed or just slightly over. So it was tough to have to turn some of the applications away, but hopefully we can provide a lot of good activities through the ones that did receive funding. And then to speak to AVICC, I just wanted to mention that both of our resolutions that we brought forward were passed or endorsed. One of them in the endorsed block because it's already kind of in motion, and then the other one looking for split taxification for short-term rentals, of course, which will go forward to UBCM in September for discussion on the floor there.
Great. Councillor Thomas did a great job, and so great that there was no comment. Mike. Did you have something to say? Yeah. Nothing else. Okay. Moving on then to question period. Ms. Hefner. Yeah, sorry.
Thank you, Mayor Law. I will now make an open call for questions to both members of the public present in the gallery and those participating. For those in the gallery who wish to speak, please raise your hand. If there's anyone attending online via Zoom who'd like to ask a question, you can do so now using the. Before asking a question, you will need to state your name, your address. Here. I will now do a call. Calling once. Calling twice. Calling 3 times. There are no comments at this time, Mayor Law.
Super. Thank you, Ms. Hefner. Okay, I'm going to move from the chair. The meeting be closed to the public pursuant to section 91 AC. And G and 92 B and I of the community charter to discuss matters relating to 91A, personal identification information about an identifiable individual who holds or is being considered for a position as an officer, employer, agent of the municipality, or another position appointed by the municipality. 91C, labor relations or other employee relations. 91G, litigation or potential litigation affecting the municipality. 92BI, consideration of information received and held in confidence relating to negotiations between the municipality, government, federal government, or both, or between the provincial government, federal government, or both, and a third party. Anybody else promise? All in favor? None opposed, motion is carried. We're going to take 5 minutes and we're going to close. Thanks for attending the meeting.